This presentation is designed to give educators a brief introduction to the basic principles of response to intervention, also referred to in Florida as the multi-tiered system of supports, or MTSS. Response to intervention is a component of both federal and state policies. It involves practices in both general education and special education. Since RtI focuses on student success for all, what each student needs is the focal point, rather than that of the traditional delivery model. There are many groups that support RtI implementation across the country. In defining the term, we chose the definition provided by the National Center on Response to Intervention. School districts in Florida were required to move to full RtI implementation in school year 2010-2011. The incorporation of tiers of instruction or intervention shifted how we viewed the path to student success. This shift alters everything. To achieve implementation of a change so fundamental to the work of educators, we look to the study of change in organizations. There are three vital components that need to be in place for change to be successfully implemented and sustained over time. They must be addressed in a continuous cycle, since one component cannot be fully created without the others being addressed. States such as Illinois and Iowa, where RtI has been the way of work for quite a while, report consistent barriers to moving forward with implementation. Most report that it takes 3 to 5 years to truly implement RtI in a building or district. We know we must have consensus in order to roll out this new way of working, but we have to show everyone involved why we need to build consensus. Principals and school teams have been given different tools to address consensus building. School belief surveys and the self-assessment of problem-solving implementation, called SAPSI, are two consensus-building activities that can open discussion among school staff. These may be viewed in the resource section of this course under the heading of RtI Training Resources. In this section, we will examine briefly the essential components of creating a multi-tiered system of support for students. In this definition from the National Association of State Directors of Special Education, 3 essential interrelated components of RtI are identified. We use data about student performance to match appropriate instruction to student needs. Learning to use and interpret data is a key skill in RtI implementation. The level of skill in the use of data is new for many educators and was not part of their original teacher training programs. We must help teachers to develop the skill so that they can comfortably use data. Particularly in the elementary grades, RtI focuses on the prevention of gaps in learning. At the secondary level, RtI focuses on responding to existing gaps in skill, as well as establishing and monitoring early warning systems for student disengagement and future failure. This diagram shows how data drives the wheel of creating improved student outcomes. Universal screening and progress monitoring provide sources of data that help teachers and administrators monitor learning on an ongoing basis. Essential components of RtI implementation include multiple tiers of support as a way of work, using screening and progress monitoring data to make instructional decisions is essential. In Florida, multi-tiered supports are to be designed for both academics and behavior. This triangle diagram shows the three-tiered system of support created by Florida. All students are to receive a strong, effective Tier 1 for instruction. Then, based on student need, a Tier 2 and possibly a Tier 3 level of support can be added. These tiers all occur within the general education framework. The next three slides compare 4 aspects of the tiers of instruction. It is important to remember that the goal is to have about 80% or more of all students achieve grade level expectations within Tier 1 or core instruction. We know that some of our students will need additional support in order to be successful. We expect about 80% of the students receiving Tier 2 intervention to be able to meet those performance goals. As they begin to achieve the goals, the Tier 2 intervention can be faded and then discontinued. Tier 3 is the most intensive intervention available in schools. Because of the intensity of this level of support, it can only be realistically delivered to a relatively small number of students, generally about 5% of a typical student population. Remember that each tier is layered on top of the previous ones. So Tier 2 is added to Tier 1, and Tier 3 is added to Tier 1 and Tier 2. We know that using data is an essential part of response to intervention. Screening is an initial step in this process. Universal screening provides educators with a picture of student progress multiple times during the school year. For instance, in reading, we have FAIR data available to indicate grade level, class, and individual student performance. Screenings are quick snapshots and need to be viewed in light of other sources of data as well. The data profile from universal screenings gives us important information in planning effective instruction. These are some of the things to consider. The next step in using data is progress monitoring. Progress monitoring is an important part of using student data. Progress monitoring data is formative in nature and can be either formal or informal. It is used to provide insight into how well students are mastering current instructional content. In an RtI framework, progress monitoring is an essential part of each tier of instruction. Teachers need to have a current measure of how students are responding to the instruction being offered. Progress monitoring instruments must be sensitive to incremental improvements in student performance. Curriculum-based measures are frequently used. A free website created by the University of Oregon allows teachers to quickly assess student performance in core skills for kindergarten through 8th grade. The website, www.easycbm.com, also automatically generates graphs of student data. In secondary professional learning communities, many groups of teachers have explored ways to create common assessments and make use of frequent, quick checks of understanding. One such practice is using exit tickets to evaluate how many students in a class actually grasped a particular concept. Being able to use student data to identify the learning needs of students is referred to as data-based decision-making. This is an important component of response to intervention implementation. Data-based decision-making is recognized as an effective educational practice. School administrators lead the analysis of data at the school level. Instructional specialists, such as coaches or district support personnel, can help schools understand how to match instruction to the needs of students based on their performance on assessments. When an analysis of data reveals a gap in student performance, we utilize the four-step problem-solving process to respond. In later modules, we will look in depth at this process, which involves conducting a gap analysis, generating multiple hypotheses, examining additional sources of data, and then developing an appropriate intervention to close the gap. The fourth step in the problem-solving process is evaluating the effectiveness of the intervention that was put in place. If the results are less than what we desire, the problem-solving cycle begins again. This slide reveals the origin of the term response to intervention. By looking at data, we allow the student's response to intervention to guide our actions. A PowerPoint version of this presentation is available in the Module 1 content area.